we're going to hear from a couple of cloud security experts on how organizations are disrupting decades of legacy approaches with a zero trust architecture to effectively reduce risk around stock breaches. I'm Willem, an editor for customer programming at the Wall Street Journal Barron's Group. I'm joined by Chaudhry, founder, CEO, and chairman of Zscaler, and Nicole Darden, vice president and chief information security officer at Carrier. Nicole, let me start with you. Thanks so much for taking the time today. In your career at Carrier, you've driven some significant IT transformation. Just to set the stage a little though, can you kind of share with the folks watching a little bit of background on Carrier?
Yeah, it's great to be with you today, and thank you for having me. Carrier is a leading provider of healthy, safe, intelligent, and sustainable building and cold chain solutions. We're in year 2 as an independent company, and we've been around for more than a century with expertise and innovations that have transformed the industry. We operate in 3 business segments. They are HVAC, refrigeration, and fire security and safety. We've leveraged the power of technology across many of our brands. And in the times that we're living, our products and services are meant to inspire confidence. We keep the air inside. We ensure buildings and homes are safe from fires and secure. And we make certain that foods and medicines ship cold and fresh. As well as during the pandemic, our cold chain technology has helped safely distribute COVID vaccines, for example, keeping the vaccines at the prescribed sub-zero temperature needed. We do all of this with a global workforce of about 56,000 employees who serve customers in more than 160 countries.
Jay, I want to welcome you as well to the conversation. Zscale has also managed to earn a strong reputation in this space in recent years. Can you tell our viewers a little bit more about your company?
Yes, thank you for inviting me for this session. Like Nicole, we have been helping our customers quite a bit, especially in recent times. I started this company in 2008. I'm a lucky product of American Dream, where I have had the chance of funding, starting 4 companies. And then in 2008, I wanted to do something big and lasting. That's how Zscaler was started, with the notion that if applications could be anywhere and users could be anywhere, you should be able to have secure, fast, and reliable access. That dream has become a reality now. We actually went public in March of 2018 on NASDAQ. We exceeded $1 billion in annual recurring revenues. In fact, we had earnings announcement yesterday. We publicly talked about that. Even at that scale, we are growing our billings at about 70+% year over year, our revenue at 60%. We are cash flow positive as a company, very international company with 50% of the business coming from outside the US. And about 35% of Fortune 500 companies are our customers. The biggest thing I'm proud of is a net promoter score. That is making sure our customers are happy. Our NPS is 76, while an average SaaS company score is about 30. So our focus is to make sure business keeps on happening securely, while all these bad guys are trying to really push more and more for ransomware and other attacks.
Nicole, last year, Carrier was spun out from United Technologies Corporation. That typically leads to a huge amount of organizational upheaval, and I'm sure meant you had to make some difficult but important decisions on the kind of approach that you would take. Can you describe what you did?
Wow, yeah, it was monumental. You can imagine being a part of such a large organization and really taking their commercial division. It was Carrier and Otis, and spinning them off. So it was more than just us. It was a situation we had to make some really, really important decisions. We could certainly transition as a like-for-like company, or we can decide to, and that's what we did. We anchored on, core principles like being cloud native, and leveraging zero trust, and specifically in cybersecurity for our program, it was to make sure and put a key focus in areas like identity and access management. So we actually, the spin in 2019, and we completed it this year, Q1 of 2021. So really, really short time period and a lot of work. I can tell you it was monumental, and what we've been able to provide is a like for better program, digital program for carrier that has really positioned them for the next few decades.
So let's get into some of the granular detail here for folks watching. What was the state of IT within your organization like back during that moment of being spun out? What were your networks like, applications, security? What was the architecture?
So we had a very traditional hub and spoke architecture, right? Heavy data centers. We were backhauling most of our traffic through our data centers, which is pretty traditional. On-prem servers, applications, not a lot of SaaS, which is again traditional for aerospace and defense. More of a castle and moat security methodology leveraged based on firewalls. So more perimeter security versus more of a zero trust model, where you're really making sure that you're able to secure the endpoints, and a heavy reliance on virtual private networks for remote access. Really costly and very complex to operate. And so we wanted to really change and go to something that was a little bit more modern, cloud native, and really focused on providing more local breakouts, which really ensures that the endpoint is being fully serviced and has the right amount of performance. So that's what we transitioned to.
Jay, how common is this at the moment, that kind of transition that Nicole's talking about?
Yeah, so what Nicole described, hub and spoke, all branches come back to the data center, then they go out to the internet, was the common thing. But it's like flying from San Fran to Chicago via Dallas or Houston. It's slow. It's speed of light is speed of light. When applications move to the cloud, you want a shortest path. So the network has to change. Security was done by what Nicole said, castle and moat security. You're inside my castle, behind my firewalls, a moat of firewalls, I'm good. Outside, you want good. The model worked in the old days, but in the world of cloud, when applications are everywhere, users are everywhere, it doesn't make sense. And the other part that creates a problem is the following. You get on the castle after proper checking. Now you're worried that this person can go anywhere in the castle. That's not good. Now you want to build a wall here, try to do unnatural things that don't work. So the network-centric model was not good. For example, Nicole talked about VPN access from home. You get your computer on, you get on the network, then you are as if you're sitting in the office. You can get over the access any applications. It's like I get on Interstate 80 in San Francisco. I can reach New York, Miami, or Dallas without hitting a single light. That's wonderful. The problem is the bad guys can do the same thing. Look at Colonial Pipeline attack. What happened? They stole VPN credentials, logged in, got on the network, then they moved laterally, found high-value billing application, encrypted it, stole the data, 100 gigs of data, then they asked for ransom. That's why we need to move our enterprises away from this legacy stuff. As long as we depend upon firewalls and VPNs, whether they're on-prem or you spin them in the cloud, a VPN by any name is VPN, a firewall by any name is firewall. And progressive leaders like Nicole are actually driving it to overcome traditional inertia that all of us generally have.
So Nicole, Jay's talking there about the need to make this transition, this transformation for an organization like yours. Can you describe for audiences how you actually made that happen in terms of transitioning from what you describe as a legacy IT kind of infrastructure. What steps did you take? It can't have been easy, I imagine. This was like a complex process. What did you do?
Well, I think you have to have core principles, and ours were really embracing cloud and SaaS, right? Because those really allow you to kind of pivot very quickly. And this helped us immensely. Certainly looking at cloud solutions like Okta and others and SailPoint were very, very helpful. And really focusing on leveraging Zscaler. Zscaler, I got to tell you, really helped us to develop the right type of security infrastructure that was required to do such. And I think when you lean into tools like this and you focus on key areas like identity and access management, which really you anchor your program on things like least privilege and making sure that users only have the access that they need. Zscaler allowed us to really deploy a security stack very quickly, and it really helped us in areas like making sure that people had access anytime, anywhere, and being able to check the security posture of their devices very quickly. So all of those things really help to deploy very quickly and make it more safe and secure. So when you think about, you have to make bets on technology, and that's what we did. We made a huge bet on Zscaler. We were able to actually roll it out in 9 days, right before COVID-19, before the pandemic, with having to send everybody home within a certain period of time. We set up a war room. We made a decision anchored on Zscaler as the platform of choice. And that really helped us to deploy this access for people anywhere, anytime, exactly what we were able to deploy. And we were so fortunate to have Zscaler work with us and partner with us to do that. And this is, again, I've had a long-term relationship with Zscaler over the years in my prior role as CISO as well.
Can I ask you, those 9 days, Nicole, I mean, look, all of us had our own difficult moments leading into this pandemic. We still are, many of us. What was that like? What were you physically doing to prepare during those 9 days?
So we were working closely together with all of our technology teams. There was a lot of people involved in making it happen. We had our infrastructure team and our application team and our cyber team and our business teams together, really kind of thinking through how are we going to deploy this technology to everybody within, you're talking people, right? Everybody's going home. We still need to operate the business. So we set up a war room and we started to deploy the solution in waves to our key stakeholders. And a lot of testing went into making sure that their applications work. I mean, the cool thing is by using ZIA and ZPA, which are two of the Zscaler products, together, we were able to make sure that not only can they get into the environment, but they can get to applications that they absolutely need. And for us as a security team, it really helped us because they're not necessarily on the network. So it really kept everybody safe and secure, especially users that we needed to get up to speed on their digital acumen, users that don't traditionally remote in, didn't really know how. So a lot of training in that space as well to get the users prepared for the shutdown.
So you're talking about people remoting in who weren't used to doing it. And I've certainly over the years had my own struggles with that process.
Yeah.
And I just wonder, you've gone through this transition. What did that transition, that transformation mean for your own VPN infrastructure? We've heard from Jay about how that gives people the key to the castle in some ways.
Exactly.
What did it mean for your VPN infrastructure?
It meant that we retired it very quickly. We were able to, when we transitioned to Zscaler, we were able to, over time, start to really divert people and transition them over. to our zero trust infrastructure. Again, like I said, 9 days, we were able to transition everybody over. We had a ton of confidence in Zscaler and its ability to protect those users. And I think that that meant all the difference for us.
Now, if I may add a couple of points. One, I think as Nicole and team set a war room, bring all the people together. Our teams, their teams work closely. That is number one. Number two, this deployment wasn't really let's ship boxes to this branch office, this home, and none of that. It was essentially downloading a piece of small piece of software to a laptop. So it just simply sends traffic to Zscaler, where we're sitting in the cloud. Think of Zscaler as an intelligent switchboard. We like to call it Zero Trust Exchange. Trust no one. But if you think of the intelligent switchboard analogy, almost like a phone system, a user comes to us. We kind of say, who are you? We validate it using the identity system that Nicole put in place. Then we say, where are you going? We check the policy. If they're accidentally going to a dangerous site, phishing site and whatnot, they get stopped. Otherwise, they get connected over the shortest path. So it simplifies it. Applications on one side, user here, we sit in the middle, connecting the right party to the right party, using new approach, the opposite of traditional firewalls and VPNs. And since we don't put people on the network, there's no lateral movement. There's no such thing that what happened to Colonial Pipeline or what happened to Marx, where one machine gets infected, everything gets infected. That's where zero trust comes in, and zero trust architecture has become pretty popular lately. Unfortunately, when something becomes very popular, it gets hijacked. Today, the meaning of zero trust is kind of getting disappeared because the legacy vendor who are worried we're getting disrupted, they're kind of calling themselves a zero trust vendor too. So our job is to make sure we get rid of the disinformation and talk about what zero trust is and how it should be done.
Nicole, I've got a lot more questions myself for you, but I want to go to an audience question we've had come in from David Lifka, who says, sounds like you've moved everything to the cloud. How does this help with your on-premises network and resources? It's a good question.
You have to understand that you still have the need for the same resources. You just have to upskill them, right? So we spent a lot of time transitioning our workforce through training and development and a lot of on-the-job training for them to really kind of understand how, you know, zero trust works and how the cloud works and how we could transfer the skills that they have today on-prem to the cloud. So that's what we were able to do. I think, again, it's faster, easier. We've automated a ton of activities that people typically completing, and really that's allowed us to ensure that our people are working on more high value items and high value initiatives. So we still use them, we just focus them on things and solving problems that the company has.
If I may add to what David asked, everyone has a hybrid environment. The applications that are sitting in the data center, and there's applications in the cloud on Azure, on AWS, and there are applications like SaaS applications like Office 365. In the Zscaler Zero Trust model, each destination is just viewed as a destination. We provide the same secure access to applications that are sitting in your data center or sitting in your Azure cloud or AWS cloud or Office 365 and the like. So it's designed to handle that way. You don't have to change application. No one says you must move to the cloud all the way to take advantage of it. We know that there will be small data center for years to come. Supporting hybrid environment with a good zero trust architecture is very natural, and we do that.
I would certainly say we still have data centers. We don't have as many. We've collapsed them down to a very small amount of data centers. So that's still the case. So we still have the need for those resources. But again, I think really helping them to develop both skills, right? Having both skills is necessary, and that's been very beneficial for us as an organization.
Yeah, and also, if I may say, in those data centers, there's still some firewalls that are designed to protect servers and applications. But for users being able to access any application anywhere, the zero trust approach helps. It eliminates your attack surface because your applications are not exposed to the internet. It removes the lateral threat movement so you can contain any compromise that happens. And on top of that, it removes complexity and cost. It becomes simpler. In fact, I would compare the new architectures in IT can be simpler. Technology changes incrementally all the time, every year. But every 20 to 30 years, there's a big architectural change. Our network security started in early 90s, and they've been doing it. It has done a good job. But now with cloud and mobility, it's no longer working. It's almost like moving away from our internal combustion engine cars to electric cars. Electric cars are cheaper, faster, better. They don't need as many parts, but they do a better job. That's really the kind of things we have done with Zero Trust architecture.
And Nicole, there's one more practical question. I think it also comes from David Lifker. When you're talking about legitimate users, what are they required to do to get a valid network credential after this transformation then?
I think the same thing that they were able to do before. Again, we had a very secure way of rolling out credentials to the users, something that they understood. We had to make it as easy as possible. And we were able to get that out to them. I don't know if specifically you're talking about in that 9-day period, or if you're just talking about in general.
In general, I think.
Yeah, so we no longer provide credentials in the same kind of the same way. We do provide a link, and they're able to go to a secure link and grab their credentials and keep working. And Zscaler has made that exponentially easy for us to get people up and running, especially as we onboard new employees.
Mm-hmm. And the identity sitting in the cloud with Okta, for example, and yes. Zscaler integration with Okta helps because ecosystem partners need to work well together, and that's what we do. The other comment I'll make is, in this new world, we don't really provide network credentials. We don't put people on the network. The policy says this user should only access these 3 applications. By doing so, you're not putting them on the network and creating the risk that you get by traditional network and firewall-based security model.
So Jay's been talking there, Nicole, about essentially a simpler architecture in some ways, making that comparison to EVs versus internal combustion. Talking almost philosophically, I guess, how would you compare your approach to cybersecurity now compared to what it was before being spun out, where I presume there was a management organization above you?
So Zscaler makes it easier, right? There's a lot of blocking and tackling by Zscaler. Remember, when you deploy Zscaler, you also deploy their security stack. And it acts just like the stack that I would have traditionally in a data center. They're doing a lot of blocking and tackling for us, right? If something does get through, we do have a security operations team that is there to defend and protect the organization and respond to an incident. But in general, Zscaler makes that extremely easy for us by doing a lot of prevention upfront.
And what we're doing also by working with partners, rather than having 20 vendors, our customers are standardizing on platforms, a smaller number of platforms. We are one of the platforms, like a switchboard. Identity is the second important vendor. Endpoint is the third important vendor. So if you look at Zero Trust, it starts with identity. We are the policy engine, and endpoint vendors like CrowdStrike make sure that the device is not compromised. So working together, we eliminate the need for having 20 vendors and trying to really manage and upgrade those point products. And there's a lot of finger pointing that goes in when things go wrong.
Yes. And so to Jay's point, those integrations that Zscaler has have been critical for us. What we use on an endpoint, the fact that they've partnered with CrowdStrike has been very well. So what is not caught by Zscaler, it is caught by CrowdStrike or another endpoint management tool. And then again, if it gets through all of those defenses, we certainly have our team that takes care of it from there.
I just want to say to people watching, if you have more questions, please do send them over, because it's always great to get everyone involved. Nicole, you've talked about being spun out, but of course, as with many other industries, there's endless amounts of M&A activity.
Yeah.
What's that meant for your confidence in the system that you've adopted here? Presumably it's quite, not frightening, that may not be the right word, but it's certainly like a headache whenever that happens, right?
So I look at Zscaler, and so just hear this analogy, right? So I look at it as the Tylenol for my headache, right? So Zscaler has solved so many problems for me as it relates to M&A, right? So divestitures or acquisitions, it's been extremely important, because technically I don't have to put new users on my network, right? As Zscaler, it's foundational to the way that. So I'm not introducing more vulnerabilities to my environment by actually onboarding a new group through an acquisition or divesting of an organization, right? It provides maximum protection for me. And because the users are not on the network, I'm not as concerned about things that I used to be concerned about. I used to be concerned about hygiene, right? And we would do thorough evaluation and assessments of organizations that we're going to purchase or divest of, just to kind of make sure that we understood what the hygiene level was, because then we would have to a very lengthy process to actually onboard them into our environment. And that I don't have to do, because they're not on my network. And so the risk posture for us as an organization has dramatically improved. And the time to onboard is like hours, right? We don't have to do as much planning on the front end, which we used to do when we needed to onboard new organizations or divest. So it's been a huge sea change for us as it relates to the planning, the cost of a divestiture or acquisition, as well as ensuring that we're not introducing additional risks to the organization.
Mm-hmm. If I may expand a little bit to clarify further, company A has its own network today. Remember, like a highway system. Company B has its own network. Traditionally, for those companies to come together, they would integrate the two networks. It's like US highway system and Mexico's highway system. You open them up, you connect with each other. Now you're worried that who can come and who can go. And then they're overlapping. If the highway names were common, in the same way the network names overlap, they start conflicting with each other. And then security gets worried about it. So in the new model, you don't even bring the networks together. If you need to really access each other's applications, assume you fly a group of people, they can go to a certain city, do their work, and come out. You really are allowed to access certain applications, and that's it, and move on. That's the zero trust architecture. Say, trust no one. Verify and connect them to only applications they need to connect to. And this new approach where you don't put people on the network like firewalls do, you go and use the internet, and the switchboard says you can talk to this application and you can't.
So let me just ask you both one final question from members of the audience before we wrap up here. So for you, Nicole, David Lifka's come back with a very valid follow-up question, if you ask me. He says, if I'm compromised, presumably if I'm a compromised user and yet I have valid credentials, how do you stop me?
Okay, can you repeat it one more time? If you are
he posits this hypothesis. If he's a compromised user with valid credentials, how do you stop him, Nicole?
Well, with Zscaler, there's no lateral movement.
Okay.
So he only, even as a valid user in a zero trust architecture, we don't trust him in our environment. Even our valid users, we're actually checking all traffic that's coming through.
Inline.
So data, resources, everything is being checked. And we have what we would consider on the identity and access side, like conditional access, right? So that user is being checked, and we're constantly authenticating that user. So if in fact they do something that is counter to our policies, we can shut them off very quickly. That's the value.
Jay, just because we're running out of time, I want to just jump in with this final question for you, Jay, from Gretchen Biller. You've been talking about things like Okta. She asks, what roles does human behavior requirements, such as dual authentication, have in the success of Zscaler credential approval? How would you describe that success?
So we depend upon credentials as the starting point. Remember, our check post says, who are you? Well, let's use Okta, Microsoft. We can do single sign-on. You can do multi-factor authentication. I can check multiple authentication at my check post. That's number one. Number two, I say identity can be stolen, so don't trust identity. Let's check the status if the device is compromised or not. If it is, I can stop it. Number three, we are looking at the behavior on ongoing basis. If in the middle of the communication, I see that this machine is trying to talk to a botnet command and control site out there, in between, since we are in line, we can enforce, we can stop that communication. And our advanced customers are taking advantage of it. These things need to be done for us to be more secure, because there are no single simple answers.
Well, look, both of you, thank you so much. I'm afraid we got to end it there. I've got so many more questions. I found this really interesting. I hope those of you watching have found it as interesting as I have. Jay Chaudhry, Nicole Darden, both thank you so much for taking part in this. And for those of you watching, hope to see you again soon.